Hi, I'm Jess.
And I'm Ryan, and you're listening to Your Therapist Is Not Okay. Welcome to Season 3.
We're going to start with a bang. We're going to talk about your therapist, dating, and what we see as red flags, and relationship advice for our clients and for you. Something that we're really excited about that's going to be a bit new this season for our listeners is that it has been a long time coming that Ryan and I have tried to get Denise to just jump in as a client occasionally to ask us questions. It almost always happens where she'll ask something for us to say, and we're like, Denise, why don't you have your voice in here? Because that's a really cool point you're making. And she's always said no except for now. So this season, we've convinced our producer, Denise, if she ever has a question that she, as a client, might think you guys want to know, she'll be asking it. So you might get a couple interruptions throughout an episode with Denise just wanting to raise something that's coming up for her.
Okay, so we wanted to start this episode talking about what kind of goes through our mind and what comes up when we're talking to our clients about dating. At least in my world, this is something that comes up all the time with clients. Relationships are one of the main things on people's mind when they come to therapy. What I usually say is, in some regard, people come to therapy either because they're struggling with relationships or because they're struggling with themselves. And
Mm,
that's, oversimplifies things to a great deal. But stuff comes in all the time with relationships, whether they're in them or they're looking to get in them.
yeah.
And there's a lot of juicy and interesting stuff when clients are talking about their dating worlds and kind of what they're looking for and how they're looking for it.
Absolutely. So today we're going to talk about clients dating and give some kind of key questions that you can ask yourself if you're going on a date. We're going to talk about us and relationships, so you get some juice there and kind of what we see about red flags. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what are some of the main things that make a good relationship. So that's kind of the structure today.
Mm. So with clients dating, I think one thing that we've both observed, and this is something I've observed within myself plenty as well,
Mm.
is this kind of like desire to see if someone else likes us. And that kind of becomes a big emphasis when you're first meeting someone or when you're chatting with people. It's like, do they like me? Did they swipe yes on me? Did they ask me on a second date? Did they seem interested in what I had to say? But Jess, we don't always hear about the flip side, or sometimes we hear about it later than we might hope to hear about it, which is, do you like them?
Yeah.
Are you interested in what they had to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's always this emphasis on, am I good enough? Am I
Mhm.
good enough can come into any sphere in our life, in work, in the kind of art we do, and definitely in relationship. And I think because, especially with online dating now, we are presenting this incredibly first image of ourselves to be picked.
Mhm.
And that image is almost like selling ourselves. We want to be swiped on. When you first get on a dating app, anyone that's been on one will kind of understand this feeling. It's so exciting at first. People are swiping on you over time, there's a disillusionment about that after failed dates, or it just feels like you're back to the grind again. You can kind of tell if you've ever been on online dating, the people who've been through the ringer, their profiles drastically change um,
Mm.
into something quite skeptical. And I think because of that, it's usually because we're seeking out this level of approval and looking for somebody to want us. It can be quite a lonely experience. And generally speaking, we don't go on a date thinking, I can't wait to go to this brand new restaurant, or I can't wait to get to know this person. The main question in our minds are, will this person like me? Can I be in a relationship? For many people, not for all. Um, and where's this going to go? Will I have a second date? Is this like, am I worth having a second date? Instead of being like, how much fun am I having with this person? Getting to know this person in this very orchestrated, weird dynamic where it's already romantic without getting to know who the person is sitting across from you.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about that kind of the dating profile thing, like in the image that we show, it's such a typically different image from maybe reality, which is
Hmm.
not to say that, I don't think people are lying. I think people are trying to, like you said, Jess, like present a very particular version of themselves or kind of maybe very cleaned up so they look like as appealing both physically and also like on paper in terms of what they do and how they act. When you mentioned that, kind of like people who have been through the ringer, like I often feel like the signs of that is like someone has a lot of like don'ts and no's like listed on their profile. They're like, don't
Yes.
contact me if you only want this, and I only want this, and like these really specific things. It's just like, oh man, you've probably really been through it.
Yes.
Yeah. But then I'm also kind of interested by the things that we might edit out to
Yes.
try to look more appealing that are authentic parts of us and that we do need a partner to know and like, if not love about us.
Mhm.
Um, of just like maybe that we have hobbies that aren't cool or something. Maybe we're into like a certain kind of gaming or something like that. Or maybe we're really goofy and we like to make faces like Jess does.
Okay, okay.
Old for neat. You guys, Jess makes the most hilarious faces. You'll probably see some of them in our Instagram posts. And I think that's
My
actually kind
authentic
of,
self.
I know, I actually think that's actually a really beautiful, authentic thing that we try our best to bring to our podcast too, is that we're silly and we're goofy and we laugh and we talk about heavy topics too, but it's there's the same kind of veneer that gets applied to therapists. There are veneers that exist in dating too, where we're like, this is like the gold star version of me. And if I'm gonna get in a relationship with someone, I'm also interested in the not gold star stuff because it's gonna come up eventually.
Yeah, it is. I'm
Yeah.
also thinking about performance in a date, like how we talk, what topics we bring up. Sex is a big one too. Like,
Mm.
I think there's a lot, we try to pretend that we're away from it, but we're not. There's so many scripts on how a woman needs to be, on how men need to be, on how same-sex couples need to be in the date, when we kind of engage in these things. And it can be really tricky to know what do I want in this rather than how am I supposed to perform. Um, and if we're constantly looking at does that person like me, we may not always be paying attention to like how am I feeling right now? Do I feel
Mhm.
pressure to perform? Do I feel free? Am I just like getting to goofy laugh or am I feeling like everything is a bit more on stage?
Mm. Yeah, and that, I mean, that kind of like looking to the other person to let us know if it's going well or not is very kind of like an approval orientation. Like, do you approve of what's happening here? Is this okay with you? And in the therapist speak, one thing that I would say about that, I've often spoken with clients about that too, is like it seems like you're putting all sources of value and
Yeah.
approval outside of yourself
Yeah.
as what we would term an external locus of evaluation, meaning all of our evaluation comes externally. We
Mm.
need that approval to feel like something was okay, or we're waiting to see did they disapprove because then I have to change.
Yeah.
But that can often lead to kind of that inauthenticity that Jess was referring to a minute ago. And
Mm.
I try my best to encourage clients to kind of reposition that to an internal locus of evaluation. Are you happy with how you showed up? Are you acting in ways that are aligned with your values? How
Mm.
did you feel when they said that? Um, yeah. And I think generally though with dating, even as I'm saying that, like just the level of evaluation
Mm.
is so high that it really orients people to this like grading and judging and comparing behaviors, which don't always lead to satisfaction. Like, yes, you do want to be looking out for are you having a good time, but people who kind of have been on dating apps for a long time or have been kind of in the dating game for a long time because things have been difficult for them for whatever reason, they have these like lists and qualifiers and like, you know. Yeah. They're not checking all the boxes. I hate box checking language.
Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of,
Yeah.
I think, can become a list of barriers and a defense mechanism against authentic intimacy.
Yeah. Exactly. I think we were talking about that below with red flags, but it's excellent to just think about that. Like when we've been scared and when we're sitting in front of someone and performing, it actually can feel really lonely. Even though we're right in front of somebody, if we're constantly in our head and wondering, like, how is this going? Is this going anywhere? How are they perceiving me? Do they like me? Are they having a good time? It kind of takes away from us just sitting in front of a stranger, very
Mm.
much. And how are we feeling in this encounter? When you meet someone in the wild, that's what I call it nowadays, when like you see somebody at like, I don't know, a book launch or whatever. Um, you're kind of just having fun.
Mm.
Like, because there's not really that underlying thing of like, maybe we're flirting, but we're not necessarily like, I haven't swiped on you, right? I haven't immediately been like, now we're on a date, right? You're just kind of like having fun. There's a little bit more of an ease. There's always performance, no matter where we are in life. Even right now, there's always a performance. But what I'm talking about is that ease of just like, you didn't dress up for this person. You didn't present who you are. You're not trying to woo them via text or saying the funny, clever opening line. Like you're just there. And that can feel quite freeing in a way that online dating isn't necessarily.
Sure, absolutely. And you both get to share and see how the other like moves through space, what their kind of gestures and flow is like. 'Cause people are very different in movement than they are poised for a picture. Like how do they talk to the bartender? How do they talk to the wait staff, their friends, etc. Like these things are really important. I know for me that's always been a big green flag is when people have like clearly have a lot of trust and love within their friend group and just seeing them
Mhm,
take care of other people. I'm like, oh, you're a really good person. And that's not
mhm.
something that's easy to capture in a
Mm.
dating profile. It's very easy to lie about on a dating profile too, even if you're mostly lying to yourself. You're like, oh, I have the best group of friends. I'm like, nah, no,
No,
you don't.
they're
No, you don't,
they're
because
not.
I do.
You're always the best. And you know what? I'm totally fine with that because I'm your friend, so I'm into that. You do have the best friends, right?
Stop it. You're only saying that because it's you. Yeah, yeah.
We have some questions that we thought would be helpful for you to ask next time you're going on a date.
Mm,
You can use the term red flags, da da da, but you can also just think like these are just like base level kinds of things. Um, the big thing is that does the person ask you questions? A good therapist always is listening to kind of like keep going, to like yes and you. A good question is like, tell me more about this work. What's your favorite thing about it? Or how'd you get into it? Or tell me more about like going to Mexico City. I've heard the food there's amazing. Like allowing that yes and. Are they asking you these
mm,
questions? Are they truly engaged? Or are you sitting with someone that's basically just monologuing at you? Because if they are, you're not
mm,
like that's actually sadly it can be a nervous tick, but generally speaking, in my experience, it's that this person is on a stage. And unless you kind of push them off the stage and join it yourself, there's not a mutuality there. And
mm.
that's not fun. And it won't be fun if you continue being in a relationship.
See, that links really in well with this next one. The question you can ask yourself is kind of like, am I having fun or am I trying to impress them? And you want to be having fun, but it has to be more than that too. Linking it with that previous one, Jess was just saying, like, when someone's monologuing, if they're funny and charismatic, like you might be having a really good time. So some of these things like you have to be kind of conscious about how they go together. Am I having fun? And do I also feel like I'm part of the conversation instead of a spectator at a show?
Mm.
Um, but yeah, focus on on your fun, not their fun.
Hmm. This one's an interesting one. We always have all these, as you beautifully said, the checklist. But what
Mm,
I think one question to ask yourself is like, as they're talking, does their face light up? Do the interests that they're talking about make them interesting? Does it make them
mm,
unique? Am I learning from them in a way that I'm coming alive as they're talking about something? Um, and how does that make me feel as I'm with them in their presence? So also what are the topics that are coming up? Is it something that's grabbing a hold of you? And that could be anything. But I often find people that doesn't have to have the same interests as you. I think sometimes that's something that clients often have as a checklist. Obviously, if they're completely divergent, pay attention. But if someone has something different about themselves that they love, pay attention to how their face lights up and how does that make you feel? Because then it's this mutuality again, where you then can also be the question asker of something.
Mm. I think that's really beautiful. I love having different interests than people that I'm with. It also gives us our own space, our own friend groups, our own activities, which is healthy.
Yeah.
What I find is more important than do we have the same interests is do we have similar values? Because that's the stuff that's going to become long-term bedrock disagreements. If it's like we value different things in society, those might be more non-negotiable conflicts down the road than do we both like spaghetti or linguine, you know?
Amen.
That's
That's
a
great.
survivable disagreement, you know?
That's an excellent point. Survivable disagreement. Whereas if
Right.
somebody really doesn't have the same values, good add-on.
And that kind of links well also with how you might observe their values. One way is, like I was saying before, how do they treat the people around them? If you're out on a date, how do they treat the staff that are out of place? How do they treat the people on the street that they run into? This can be kind of a good indication of how they treat other people when they're not trying to impress them. So once they're no longer trying to impress you, you're having an idea of this is maybe the treatment that I would get.
Mm,
And again, here you're kind of looking for alignment, right? If they're treating people in a way that you're like, yep, that makes sense to me, then that's probably a good match.
yeah. Those are kind of our key questions when you're first on a date. We'll get into relationships and things like that after and kind of talk about our own experiences, but those are some to kind of just have in the bank.
Hmm. And that can lead us nicely into therapist dating. Now we have these wonderful, juicy questions and ideas about dating where we can support our clients to have healthy dates and develop healthy relationships. But when your therapist dates, it's not always graceful. It's not always even healthy. My question is, do we take our own advice? Absolutely not.
Try to, but we try to.
We do try to. We try our darndest, but as always, your therapist is not
Not
okay.
okay.
So we're going to talk a little bit about some of our experiences and kind of how we navigate and negotiate the idea of red flags.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I've learned a lot from my clients. I have been on dating apps. After years of hearing my clients talking about their own experiences, I got to do it myself. And I am incredibly goofy, right? I might um, have centered self and be a therapist and all the things that might make me seem quite engaged and serious. And that is a huge side of me. But I'm also just a total weirdo. And so I didn't really want anybody to, I guess, swipe right and then us both have a bad date. So I picked some pictures of me. There was one time I hiked a record player up with my friend Busk for Tourists on Arthur's Seat in Edinburgh. Weirdest thing. And so you have a picture of me up there. You have a picture of me with a friend that took me to this insane amusement park kind of thing and behind a garden center that was just like hidden. And we had the best day. I picked a one with a picture you took of me, Ryan, with me wearing one of my many wacky hats. Remember that pink velvet one that I had with the
It was a
feather?
good hat. That was a good hat. Yeah.
And I was holding my doctorate. And so I had like all these moments. And basically the question I asked myself in my profile is like, what am I proud of? What are moments in my life rather than how do I look? Because all of these have different facial expressions. Most of the time I'm laughing or having a good time. And I'm like, you're getting a sense of who I am. And
Mm.
so if that's not a sense you want, please swipe away. I actually don't want to sell myself to someone that um wouldn't want what I'm selling, I guess, right? So that was kind of a big one that I kind of took because sometimes clients would show me their profiles and I'm like, you look very nice. I I haven't seen you look like that in session.
Are you just reading your clients for filth? Oh, honey, you've not done your hair once for session.
I mean, you don't have to impress me, but I'm just thinking, like, wouldn't like, are there authentic things instead of these glamour shots, I guess? And I think the thing that happens with real life is you don't get the curated smiles. You don't get the that kind of like immediate put together with perfect lighting, perfect angles. You're just your body. You're just
Mm,
yourself. You're your affect. You're who you are. Are there pictures that would make you seem like that? So that was something I did. And I also kind of wanted to make sure that in this space, I didn't lose myself. I kept seeing clients after that kind of like dates after dates almost lose self-esteem
mm,
because they kept having one date, maybe two, and then it fizzles, or they sadly would have sex and then it's done. And I saw people kind of really come back, and especially because I'm a trauma therapist, we might work with dubious consent where you don't really want to engage in these activities, but you feel like you should because either the person's pressuring you to, or you're kind of pressuring yourself based on societal expectations. And so I really wanted to try to be myself. And I felt firsthand how that self-esteem can take a plummet. Like really
mm.
felt it, especially after months going through it. I realized like so much empathy for people in the dating world because it can be really hard to keep yourself and keep your excitement and keep that momentum when you've had date after date that have really just been kind of a waste of your time. I tried to tell myself it wasn't, that I got to like discover new things and new people. But there were some dates I'd come back from being like, I just wish I hung out with Maggie, my dog, and read a book. Because like probably would have felt a little bit more engaged by the end of the night. And so I think those were some of my major experiences when it came to dating. And it it really allowed me to kind of also set good boundaries for myself. So knowing like what do I want was a question I kept asking myself. And I had to ask myself that same question that you asked about, am I having fun? And
Mm.
it was sad sometimes when the answer would come back, I don't think I really did. I think I was just like engaging and having a good conversation. Being a therapist usually means we know how to ask good questions. But did I have a lot of fun? Like, did I feel like I was energized at the end? It was sad when the answer would come back no. So it gave me a lot of empathy and understanding for just how bleak it can feel sometimes after months of doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, I hear that. I really hear that. It's making me reflect on some of my own dating experiences as well. I haven't dated in a long time. I've been in a relationship for 7 years. So it's been, more than 7 years, since I was kind of dating regularly. But there was a time when I did it a lot, and I used online dating for many years. So maybe I was the bitter queen I was referencing earlier. Maybe that was me. But I've kind of had the gamut of like good and bad experiences. I've had really lovely dates. And I've also had dates where people said things that I was like, is this a movie? Like, is this even real? Like, I've had the like, you'd be really hot if you lost weight. Like, I've had, you know, gay men are notoriously awful. Um, there's a lot of kind of shame and judgment and expectation that, as we talked about in our internalized homophobia episode, we carry from our trauma into the way we are as a community.
Mm.
And I've definitely been very much a person who adjusts myself to other people just by instant habit. And that's something that I think has really impacted me in a negative way when I was dating. And I worry about it for clients when it comes up as well, of kind of like, how quick are you to change yourself to make someone else comfortable? Whether that
Yeah.
means you're trying to like take on new things that you're not actually interested in, or is it that you're kind of like dulling your light, so to speak, to let other people
Mhm.
shine.
Yep.
And those are some of the kind of like habits and dispositions that led me to be a therapist. But when it comes to my individual dating or relationship life, those aren't really healthy things. Um, so yeah, I definitely noticed that, and I also notice how those same traits that might make me effective as a therapist are not going to be good for dating. I do want to follow along with my clients and synchronize to how they're feeling and be able to be like really in their world. But when I'm in an intimate relationship, I also need them to be in my world. And I
Yeah.
also need to, allow my world to exist and thrive and be nurtured. So I kind of really look out for and have fallen the wrong direction many times on whether I'm being taken care of or taking care of someone else.
Mm.
You want a balance of those things. You don't want it to be tipped extremely one way or the other.
What I like about what you're saying, Ryan, is that we often talk about red flags for other people. But
Mm,
what we're kind of talking about too is like, what are red flags in myself that I need to make sure I work on in order to be able to create a boundary for myself so that I don't fall into these patterns as well.
mm,
Because it might
yes.
not always be the partner's fault, but then if you're always kind of like engaged with them, it can probably feel quite enlivening that they might not even realize, oh, wait, is this person just making me feel good? How am I reciprocating that? A lot of times when we have these behaviors, the other person may not even realize that we're falling into that pattern.
Hmm. And that can down the road have just as much of a negative impact on the person who is being taken care of or the person who is being allowed to shine because it wasn't authentic.
Mm,
Or they all will also suffer from being in a one-sided relationship that it stunts people's growth to not get authentic feedback and response. And that's something that we rob when we do more people-pleasing behaviors. We rob people of those authentic growth-fueled conversations and actions.
yeah.
Um, and so I think that does really lead me to reflect on the idea of people as red flags or people as toxic. It's never something that sat well with me because I really think it tends to be combinations of people and relationships between people that become problematic or difficult.
Yeah.
So I tend to not think of, even if I tease Jess and we laugh together, I don't think of people as red flags or as being red flags. Someone might be a red flag to you, and that same way of being or thinking or speaking is a green flag for someone else because they're aligned.
Hmm. Yeah. If you love to treat the serving staff really poorly,
Then
then
you want to date someone who's also a dick.
yeah, then that's soulmates right there, isn't it?
That's soulmates. That's someone who might be, a great match with Jess. I don't know. I'm just kidding, you guys. Jess is literally the sweetest person ever.
One thing when we were talking about this, trying to get serious again, is I think that people aren't red flags, but I think that society can create these really problematic
Mm,
thoughts that I would say are huge red flags in society. There are a lot, oof, like way more than would ever come through any algorithm that I know of, because I usually get the stitches where there's a response next to it just because the algorithm knows that I'm probably not into this, but I'm interested in the response is this understanding of like a high value woman or a high value man, that a woman is supposed to be feminine and let the man lead, and that, but she also should be a woman who takes care of herself, da da da. Like the list goes on. Often it's quite contradictory. Like you want a very intelligent woman, but you definitely don't want her to stand up to you. I've never met anybody like that. And so you see these very problematic things that can get into our head about how we might come across as having more value. And I think that's incredibly problematic and a red flag in society that we can hear about quite a bit because it takes away again that authenticity. And it creates again this dynamic, often within heteronormative roles, I would say, of people who are supposed to fit this mold to be this couple, but often you find really in that way two people who are being highly inauthentic together and fitting into a society kind of structure. And when we look at these kind of red flags and we have then people telling us that this is how it should be, it can be hard to recognize those kind of values. We can see it even in media about who this person gets to be and how they sweep in and save the day, the damsel, all of these kinds of narratives can create these kinds of fantasies, performances that are highly inauthentic and very problematic.
absolutely. And when I think about those kind of like stereotypical red and green flags, like how we're supposed to be with others, how we're supposed to be high value or not high value. That is part of what ends up fabricating the kind of dating profiles, right? I want to look like this high value person. And so these are the pictures I'll choose and these are the things I'll say. Um, Rather than, as Jess said, being more authentic. That's also for me, I would say, when people kind of come with these values or beliefs that are like very founded in how we fit into society and how we perform appropriately, that's kind of a red flag for me is when toxic things from society are seeping into my relationships, or when I see
Mhm.
someone on the first date or even before they meet me wants me to be a certain thing besides what I exactly am.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
Mhm.
that ties exactly into that checklist you were talking about.
Mm.
That when we look at somebody, we were talking a lot about how we wonder if they like us. I think the flip side of that is then we also have a checklist in our head that might have more to do with societal expectations. Do they have a good job? Are they like are they good to their family? Do they have this? Do they have that? Do they own their house? Like there's so many things that are actually more societal expectations of somebody being worthy or valued than necessarily what makes up a good relationship. Someone might have had a past where they've been divorced or that they've had a bad relationship and had to say goodbye to mom and dad, where they might not own their house and are happy renting. Like there's so many things that do not constitute a relationship, but actually just what a person is and who they've been through and their resilience. And we often
Mhm.
don't use terms like that when we're thinking about this based on the fact that we have certain narratives that tell us someone's value rather than understanding I'm actually getting into a relationship, regardless of who this is, with probably a very messy human because we all
Mm.
are. How do I get to learn that holistic kind of sense? As you perfectly said, I want to know the
Mm.
whole person.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's kind of a big difference between wanting to pick someone up and have them fit into your life, your plan for your life that you came up with, or that society came up with, or you were told you were supposed to have, instead of finding someone that you build a healthy and beautiful relationship with, and then you build a life together.
Hmm.
That's probably not going to look exactly like the kind of the cookie cutter thing that you were told to have. Might bear a lot of similarities, and that's fine. But it might not, and it will feel really like it's you and your partners as well, which I think is important. Thinking about us as therapists dating, there are some things that in relationships I notice more since I became a therapist than I did before. Some of those things for me that I'm thinking about that kind of come up with red flag stuff or with talking about us, how we get to know people and what we want to show is like I don't really want to take care of someone all the time as if I were their therapist. That's not what I'm looking for in my personal life. I don't want to have people who are projects that I'm thinking about making better. I don't want to have people who I'm educating on how to treat other people. I'm really looking for someone who's on the same page as me.
Mm.
Even we may have differences in ways we complement and help each other, but again, in balance, so that we're both doing that for one another, rather than I'm in this therapist maternal kind of weird role.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so true. We're off the clock, right?
Hmm.
Like this is a vocation, I think. Being a therapist is an odd job, and often it takes somebody who would probably still do this job if they won the lottery. It's not usually just this 9 to 5 for many therapists. At the same time, being off means we're not going to therapize you with our friends, with our partners. And
Hmm.
often we'll need to be taken care of. And many times we'll also need somebody to take care of our mess and who we really are. And I think that makes sense. For myself, I think I realized maybe it's getting older, but maybe it's also just knowing myself more because of this role. I have a lot of different worlds I live in. And with a partner, it was necessary that they're a part of all of those worlds, from the gigantic pride parties that I throw, to me actually having a lot of unhomed friends around my neighborhood, and to having friends that are quite intelligent and having these deep chats. Like I have all these worlds that I live in that I love. And a partner for me had to be a part of all of those worlds. That they can fit within those worlds and feel like they're a part of my life and not just the part that they want. Um, and I don't think I would have known that before I was a therapist or when I was younger. I don't think I would have realized how important it was to have someone beside me hosting or saying hello or offering that. And that's a weird thing to ask from somebody. And I realized that. And it was really important to kind of know that that's still a value that I wouldn't have read in any kind of like article or anything else. I just all of a sudden realized for myself, like that's a huge part of my soul.
Absolutely, those are really important things to kind of to keep in mind and for each individual person to figure out like what are these things that are really important for me in a relationship, right? There might also be some people who that's not the most important thing to them in a relationship.
Not at all.
And they have something else. And that's, you gotta work on learning what are your important things so that you can articulate at least to yourself, if not also to other people, like this is a really important thing to me.
I think you're right. Like, and one of the things that I often see in dating is it's almost always about, will this work? Is this person right? Instead of thinking, who are you here?
Mm.
And what do you need? And what would make you come alive? Instead of just thinking, do they like me? Thinking, what's a partner for me? And
Hmm.
who am I as a partner? These questions go bigger than just, do I find them like funny or attractive or successful? It's also like, what do I want to build? How do I want to build that? Who do I need? And when you start to get away from society's kind of, what do you call it, like dictation on what that is, you start to realize that that question actually requires you to do a lot of introspective work because you might realize a lot of things that you were told might not even matter and there's something else. Or the person that you were told that you should be attracted to might look completely divergent but make you feel like the only gal in the world, you know? And
Mm.
that's so cool when you get past some of these kind of barriers.
Mm. Yeah, I find like I often would ask myself and friends in particular about like, is this person bringing out the best in me? Does this
Mm,
person make me feel like more me even than I thought possible? Do they encourage me? Does just being around them make me want to be, a great version of myself, still of yourself, but a
mm-hmm,
great version? There's the anxious parts of me are as much a part of me as the confident and
mm-hmm,
communicative parts. And if someone I'm with always brings out my anxious side, may or may not be their fault, but it may be a good sign that it's not a great fit.
yeah.
I'm not my best self. And there's always an opportunity to introspect on, why is that? Does that have anything to do with the other person or not? Maybe am I not quite ready to date and I need to do some more self work before I do that? So, sorry, guys. Sometimes you got to do some self work and, learn about yourself before you're fully ready to form a healthy relationship. Doesn't mean you have to be a hermit, but it does mean that before some of that stuff is processed, it's kind of hard to lay a healthy foundation.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you can allow me to interrupt, what, where does that line lie in terms of doing enough self-work to be ready for a relationship and then um, feeling like I have to be this finished product before I am a like worthy of love. I feel like it's a very tricky thing to navigate because sometimes when you get into this self-work, self-work, self-work mentality, it can be hard to then allow yourself to be loved because you feel like you're not yet worthy of love. So what would you define that as if you're able to at all? Or what does it kind of look like or feel like?
Denise, our
That's
producer, everyone, grabbing
yeah.
zingers.
That's a really great question, Denise. I really love that. Yeah, so I think as we've talked about before in other episodes, we're not going to be creating a finished product in therapy. We're not going to churn out a perfect person and be like, oh, look, it's done, it's all good. That's not really what therapy is. And that's not what any kind of self work really is. So, no, you don't have to be this perfect solved person before you start dating by any means. What I would be looking for in myself and others to feel like, okay, maybe it's time to do a healthy relationship thing is, do they understand themselves well enough to care for their mental health? Right. And that looks different person to person, but that's that kind of like, no, I'm not perfect, but do I know how to take care of myself when I'm feeling anxious or when I'm feeling depressed?
Mhm.
Do I kind of know how to express and state my boundaries a little bit? So a lot of it for me is more about how do I process things rather than what am I as a finished product, right? So a sign from me would be like someone's able to talk about their fears with a
Yeah.
partner when it's relevant. Not that they don't have fears, but that they're able to say like, "Hey, when you did that, I felt really afraid. I felt like we were going to be over or something." Right? So being healthy doesn't mean never being afraid or never having a fight or never being confused about something. In fact, all of those things are actually really healthy things to
Yeah.
have a disagreement, to be able to talk it through. So if I'm looking for is my partner or am I able to have a healthy relationship, are we able to have a constructive conflict that actually makes us closer, makes us understand each other better, gives us information that we're willing to act on, that we're able to say like, okay, maybe this isn't the right for either of us. When that's not because screw you. That's just because maybe it's not the right fit. You're still a wonderful person. I often say to anyone who I've ever dated in the past, I don't like thinking my exes are bad people. I wouldn't date someone who sucks.
No.
They're all incredible people. Just because it didn't work out and we weren't a good fit doesn't mean that they weren't amazing.
I think what you're picking on also means that we're able to know and address what's going on in us. Relationships are kind of a collision. You have two people that collide together, and usually for the first year, figuring out what that means. And that means that you're going to have anxiety, jealousy, you're going to have overwhelming feelings, maybe fear. You might feel love way too soon. All of those things are awesome. When we've done some of the real important introspective work, we recognize them and we might say, I felt really anxious actually this weekend. I think it's a me thing. I think you being busy with your friends and not texting me, maybe go through a swirl. And you know you have a good partner when they're like, I hear that. Is there something else you would need? Or let's talk about that. Instead of being like, whoa, needy, that's not someone you want. You don't want someone who can't match you in your vulnerability. And
Hmm.
so that's what we're also talking about when it comes to partnership is recognizing this stuff in yourself and then being able to, instead of just bottling it up and creating resentment, which will happen, is actually being able to address it early on,
Mm.
which kind of ties us into our final part of the segment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking, I was like, I feel like I kind of started it in a way.
I did.
Yeah, and I think I love that you mentioned that vulnerability piece too, right? Because that those are the kind of dating non-negotiables that actually I have over time kind of arrived at. Like, I don't need you to have a certain kind of job, but I do need you to be able to meet me in vulnerability,
Yeah.
be able to offer it and receive it as well. And I think something that you and I have talked about, and that I think is really big, that I've heard from a lot of couples counseling things as well, is kind of like relationships once they kind of get going and you establish the norms in them, those norms that you establish pretty early on
Yeah.
become, in a sense, the equilibrium of the relationship that you always tend back to. Those patterns that you kind of go back to.
So if you're not talking to your partner because you're scared of the reaction, that's going to be create a pattern. And as therapists, we've seen it time and time again, where your fear, if we don't address it or talk about it, it can build. And that's, you can see that happen when they ask you what's wrong and you might say nothing's wrong, or you try to hide something from your partner. That creates a level of kind of disreality for your partner where they don't know where they stand, and you're creating this pattern of we don't talk about things. And so if you go in from the get-go being pretty honest and open, you might not be met, and that's also an excellent sign that that person might not be able to meet you there, and you
Mhm.
might not want that. A good relationship, I would say, regardless of what kind of relationship you have, starts with openness. I've
Mhm.
never seen a good relationship that doesn't have that, that doesn't have good conflict. In fact, there's some really awesome relationship therapists that I don't know if I fully buy into this, but I like what they have to say. They say that often the relationship starts after the first good conflict. And what they
Mm.
mean by that is usually because the veneer's off. You've been able to say something that might have hit a boundary of yours or something that doesn't land right, and you've been able to work through it.
Absolutely. And that I get that the working through it. That's really, I think, a lot of the message here is that what I would call a healthy relationship is a relationship where you can work through it together, where that is
Mhm.
possible. So do it early on. That's a great relationship test to me. Is like if I bring up this thing that I'm nervous to bring up, it's
Mm.
normal to be nervous. How do I feel afterwards? Do I feel like it was met and I was supported? Or do I feel like they kind of said like, yeah, that's weird. I don't want to talk about that. Or, attacked you for it, got super defensive. You are witnessing live how they're going to respond when something that really matters comes up.
Yep. Red flag.
Red flag.
Here's one that I see in my clients a lot that I often have to argue about. So you guys get this one as a freebie. Yes, ask for your needs. If you want someone to tell you that you're beautiful when you dress up for dates, set the foundation that you would love that. No, it doesn't make it inauthentic. Think of it this way. If you ask for your needs to be met and the person meets them, that's fabulous.
hmm
If you tell somebody, can you tell me why you love me? When you guys are in a relationship and they do, that's fabulous. There's
hmm
no such thing as a mind reader when it comes to relationships. There's no person that's going to be able to meet your needs unless you tell them what those needs are. And so many people think, well, if I have to tell them, then does it matter? Yes, it matters. Because if you tell them and they do it, isn't that yet again fabulous? Like it's just
hmm
so that would be one of the things that I think I would tell as a personal thing to work on. What do you need and can you ask for it?
Right. Absolutely. And I also the kind of concept of being too needy or someone being a needy person, I don't love it. It just feels like you're probably not a match with that person if they don't like you. Right? All people are quote unquote needy.
Yeah.
That's okay. Everyone has needs, right? For me, it's very similar when people are like, oh, this kid is just acting out for attention. Oh, this kid is, having mental health problems for attention. And I'm like, well, do they need attention? They probably do.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah. So your needs deserve attention too.
Yeah. I always think it's funny when somebody almost gets angry when they don't state a need and then it's not met. Sorry to be a dick, but that's on you.
Hmm
Yeah. I think we're just about to close.
Yeah.
Um, I think the last thing I would say is that all relationships are difficult, even
hmm
when they're wonderful. There's this aspect of being able to figure out how to be together with somebody. And it means you're going to probably do things that don't work for someone else. It means that you're going to grow and learn how to be a bigger version of yourself. Ryan said that they love when someone makes them the best version, but that version probably has changed over time because that person is feeding into this.
hmm
And that growing and learning together takes conflict. Really, it does. And through that conflict, you get more comfortable, you learn. And if you establish those patterns early, you probably have pretty good foundation that is nurturing. And so don't worry about that kind of aspect of conflict or difficulty, the question you really want to ask yourself is, does this difficulty make me better? Is this conflict, even though it's hard, worth it?
Absolutely. I love those questions. It's a really beautiful note to end on.
Yeah.
Whether your therapist is single, dating, or taken, they're still not okay. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, check out our others. And stay tuned for even more episodes coming up.
Follow us and leave a review on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please tell your friends.
You can also follow us on Instagram too, at Your Therapist Is Not Okay. Also, if you have any questions that you want us to answer, send us a DM there. We would love to answer your questions. And a lot of our topics come from listeners just like you.